Hey guys, hey Spider, hey Andrea. Hopefully I don't sound too bad. I'm using my headset mic just because I'm doing a bit of building. This is for a review that I'm in the middle of for this Tyro 79 because we can't forget about our beginner pals out there that are just getting into the hobby. So I know I do lots of advanced stuff and sort of really nice builds, but we need to look at the cheap and getting into it stuff occasionally as well. Um, I did do this last night, but it really was at the small hours of the morning. So some of you guys have already been on and chat with me last night when I did this part. But I thought I'd just do a bit more of it tonight and see how the kind of live streaming and hanging out with you guys goes, because it was good fun last night. We chat about all kinds of stuff. So if you want to ask me any questions and talk about other stuff, or you want to see some various bits and pieces I've got here, um, or there's anything topical you want to discuss with me while I'm putting this thing together, feel free to ask away. Who else we got in the chat? Monkey FBV, hi. Richard Hobday, hello buddy. Mikey Dread, droning on. Hey Ash. Who else have we got? Weirdbeard FPV, hey man. What do you think about the new Beta 85 HD? I presume you mean Monkey FPV's just asked that. I presume you're talking about Beta FPV. Is that what you're talking about? The new sort of larger whoop that's coming out by them? Is that the guys? If you're talking about that, I do have one coming, but I don't think it's the HD version, and I believe it's still prototype territory. But I'm interested to check it out and see what it's like, because obviously I messed around with a lot of the other beta FPV stuff, so they're sending me things and prototypes as they get them. They've been really receptive actually, so I'm looking forward to receiving that. And I mentioned it last night, but there is a bunch of other whoop style frames that I'll be looking at, which include the Mobula 7, the Tiny Hawk, and the Trash Can. So I'm probably going to do those as maybe a one-hit video where we just take all three of them out to the field and we have some fun and see which ones I like. I kind of know which one my favourite is, having had a little bit of a play with them already. But I'll keep that disclosed until we do it. Mr. Thrust is in the chat. Hey man. Droning on, say, love your tutorial vids. Unfortunately, I'm cooking a curry for the missus and so can't hang around. No problem, Ash. Curry comes above everything. Do it. Missed LDO last night. That's the 4S, says Spider. So yeah, this is 3 to 4S. There's kind of conflicting information on the Banggood page for this guy. But looking at the KV of these motors, they are, let's have a look. They're a 1607 2800 kV, so yeah, absolutely, they'll be fine. Spinning 3-inch props 4S, that shouldn't be an issue at all. Certainly, the most important thing, never mind the kV of the props and not wanting to overprop them, the main thing is that the ESC and the electronics can handle 4S, and looking at the specs, it can. I don't see that as being a problem. One thing that I mentioned this last night. Anyone that was on my stream late last night, sorry if I repeat myself, but for the benefit of those that are hanging around today, there's a few bits I should mention, which I cover in the review. But I'm really happy to see that the ESC that they've provided for this one has lots of capacitors all over it, because the Tyro 99 was a bit of a nightmare for motor noise getting through to the video. Because they just literally didn't put any capacitors on, nowhere on the VTX, nowhere on the ESC, and it was noisy as hell. Even an LC filter in line would have problems with that. So I'm really pleased to see they've done that. There's been a couple of nice revisions on here. I'll go into more detail when you see the review video for this being released. But my biggest disappointment is the fact that even on the website, they've got pictures of if you go and have a look at the Banggood product page for this guy, you'll see that there's a close-up of the wires, and the wires are silicone insulated, which of course is the kind of the norm. We all expect that. Silicone's heat resistant, and that's good, especially if you're getting into the hobby and you want to be able to solder. You know, some people are just learning how to solder, and heat resistant silicone makes that much easier to do. Plastic insulation, of course, melts very easily, so I was very disappointed to see that pulling this out the package, the motor wires still have plastic insulation on them, which is a terrible decision. And I did feedback and whinge to Banggood about this, or Eachine, who are a subsidiary of Banggood, that that's something that needed sorting out. But it appears they didn't listen to that. But ho hum, for $79, we can't ask for the world. I'm sure it'll fly just fine. Let's have a look in the chat. Andrea asked, how are going your tests with the GPS in Betaflight? I haven't actually had much time to fly the GPS quad. I've actually got it sitting next to me because I was looking at it last night. That was this guy. I haven't had a chance to go back to this yet, but I will. I know people are very interested in it. I'm not sure what's changed development-wise from when I got this up and running and flying. This has been such an awesome little build with these Cobra motors, got the Cadix turtles in there, the GPS on it. It's just a real little screamer, tons of fun. So yeah, I'll probably do a video where we talk a bit more about this build and how the GPS stuff is working out. I need to get into the CLI and see what they've changed since I last did this, to see if anything's been improved. There were a couple of buggy things that I noticed, certainly in terms of setting the perimeter or the radius for this to start its descent profile when returning to home. And if you trigger it outside of that, then you end up, sorry, excuse my phone, then you end up, it ends up just disarming, because it has like a checklist and it needs to say, this is good, this many satellites is good, this is good, this is good, right, I'm going to return to home. And if you're inside the descent profile radius, that would cause it to disarm. But obviously you need that radius to be a decent amount, otherwise your descent profile is very, very steep. If you make it like 25 meters, it's going to get within 25 meters and then come hurtling in at, you know, far too many meters per second vertically. So there's a lot to tweak to get with this, to get this just right, and there's some CLI settings to play with. But once I had it sorted, it's a nice redundancy thing to have. And obviously it's tiny and it only sips a tiny bit of power. The only thing is you can't put this underneath the carbon. This needs a clean line of sight. Because I've seen some people have asked that, is it just put it inside the stack somewhere, and it's that if you've got a carbon plate across the top, it will probably still pick up satellites, but it won't pick up many of them. If you and you need a minimum number of satellites to take off anyway before it will say, you know, I'm happy with returning at home. Returning at home, I can triangulate properly, etc. So, yeah, we'll get back to we will get back to that. The list of things I have to do is absolutely huge, so I do apologise. I'm slowly getting there. Life or Leaf Ericsson says hello from Sweden. You are the best. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in. I have the BFF3 board and I updated 3.5 just now. Crossfire is UART 1. If I enabled something on UART 2 in ports tab, I can only get motors 3 and 4 to spin. If I disable UART 2, all works normally. Why? That's an unusual problem. I don't think shouldn't have anything to do with Crossfire. That sounds like you've got a conflict maybe in the resource tab. I'm definitely going to do a video on how to operate the resources. I actually had to do it, mess around with the resource tab today, because my one of my latest beautiful builds, which I flashed and showed off last night, which is this guy. This is a Nemesis frame by Halo, super light racing build that is currently sitting at 239 grams as I hold it, which is just completely mental. But one thing I had to do, the stack in this is this is very popular, this whole thing of having stacks that interlink. So they sit on top of blocks, And while that's great to have interlinking stacks, the problem you can have is if you need to rotate the stack. See, I had to rotate this because the camera, originally this was sitting 180 degrees around the other way, and if you can see there's a little half stack VTX there at the back, and that is actually meant to be the front of the stack. But because of the way everything interlinks, if you rotate the flight controller around, which is what I had to do because the VTX and the flight controller are block linked, I can't just swap that to the other side and there's no breakout pins. The ESC stack had to come with it, and I didn't think about that. So when I rotated the stack around, what I ended up doing was having, instead of having motor 1 back here, it was actually like this, and motor 1 was here. Sorry, here. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4. And obviously the minute I armed it, it flipped out. So what you have to do is go into the resource of the CLI, and you have to remap the motor outputs. You have to clean slate it and then take the numbers, so like B01, and it'll be different per flight controller, and you move it from, in this case we were moving, that was considered to be motor 1 via the ESC's native orientation. I had to move it to over here, which would be ESC's 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 had to go to 4. And it sounds complicated, but I've got a really simple method for doing it, and how to do stuff like that, and it's actually very quick. It used to be a pain in the backside, but now it's a really quick and simple thing to do. So yes, let's have a look. The Riddler FPV. Hey man, good to see you. Is there a formula or rule of thumb for determining the safe power range for a given KV motor aside from the manufacturer's specs? I think what you need to do, it's kind of a dirty method really. There is obviously the mathematical way to look at stuff, but the quick and dirty way to do it really, when it comes to KV and motors, is to keep an eye on temperatures. That's the quick and dirty way to try and find out, and also use your ear. I think your ear is really important, especially when I tune. I'm always listening for oscillation and things that can give away when a tune is bad. That can also tell you a lot about when you're getting sagging. Obviously, you've got current meters in the OSD to help you with things like that, but I find my ear helps me more than anything. But when it comes to KV, I'll usually hover, I'll do some aggressive throttle maneuvers, I'll bring it down, and I'll see what the temperatures are like. And when you're messing around with high KV motors, because someone actually emailed me asking me about high KV motors, I mean, I don't normally run a high KV setup. I'm usually a 2450 KV guy with a nice stiff prop that won't flex. It gives me really precise throttle control, and the efficiency is good, and I know that feel and how to prop that kind of motor well on a nice tall stator like a 2207. That tends to be my preference. But that new Archon I built was a 2750 kV motor, 2306 stator, and the main thing I think that suits high kV setups, and this is a mistake people I think make, is they end up putting high kV modes on very heavy quads, and it can either be that, it can be over propping, which is a real thing. You know, people get really excited about new props, and they're like, oh, it's a 5052, let's chuck it on my 3000 kV motors and I'll have infinite power to the moon. No, you won't. You'll burn the coils out on your motor. You'll absolutely make your battery cry, and minimize the number of cycles you'll get out of it. You're just pulling masses of current. That's just not the way to do it. But you could tell immediately from the temperatures that you're overpropping your motor, and that it's just outside the remit of what should be comfortable and what should be efficient. And efficiency is a big thing. You know, we don't get to fly these quads for very long. I can tell you now, on like my V1 Archon is not exactly a light quadcopter, but I can get nearly 4.5 minutes of flight out of that doing my usual freestyle stuff because it's propped correctly for the KV. And even though it's a heavy quad and carrying a GoPro and a 1500 milliamp battery, I'll get great flight times and I'll get the power I need out of it. And that's all down to keeping a close eye on temps and flight times and making sure everything's running the way it should. But with high KV, there's a few things that I recommend. One is go for a light build. If it's a 5-inch, you want to talk about, really I aim for that magic 600 to 600 40 grams is probably where I'm looking in terms of weight of the quadcopter. That's within the remit of going for a high kV setup, a high, like up in that 2700 kV area. And then in terms of pitch of prop and also weight of prop, definitely don't stick a 50-50 big super thick dowel prop on there. Like, that's just the wrong thing to do. Again, you're over propping it. The higher the kV, the motor's going to want to spin up fast, and for that you want a light prop, or if you want to go for a stiffer prop, which is my preference, go for something with a low pitch. So I would say no more than, I mean, the sweet spot for me on something that high kV is about a 50. It was about 40 pitch, between 40 and 43 tends to feel really good. And then I think between high kV and mid kV, once it's balanced and efficient and working well, you won't see any detriment to the flight time. So if you see a massive detrimental effect to your flight time, you haven't propped it correctly, or your quad's too heavy, or there's something out of whack there. Because your high kV setup there's no reason why that can't run as efficiently as a mid-range kV setup. But if there is a problem, those are kind of the things to look at. Those that's where I'd look at weight of the prop, pitch of the prop. Get all those things right, and what you end up with, I find, is a different feel. The throttle. I was saying this on email to someone earlier. It feels less precise to me than a mid-range kV on a stiff heavier prop. It feels like I can more have that, like, hitting a barn door effect when I drop from maneuver and just want to lock to the ground. So it feels more spongy, but it's more responsive. So you get more response from a high kV, but slightly less precision. But after a bit of flying with it, I actually really liked it. So I could fly either. I think they both kind of work well. Sorry, that ended up being a huge rant, but I hope that answered your question. Ladder says, back at it again, NJ, do you ever sleep? No, I just recharge the batteries and get straight back on it. I haven't got time to sleep, man. Got too much to do. Mikey Dread, love Halo frames. Yep, you and me too, buddy. What Betaflight version will you flash, says the Red Light. I will probably flash Betaflight 4 because I'm working and tuning it a lot. I know that's kind of, I mean, by the time these are selling in bigger numbers, Betaflight 4 won't be that far away. Although I did hear it got delayed, but in terms of the flight characteristics, Betaflight 4 is so good that I'm going to find it tricky to go back to 351 or whatever increment 3.5 is on. See, I've already forgotten because I'm flashing everything with Betaflight 4. But it's very, very good. It is a development build. Be aware of that. There's still lots of bugs to iron out, and I found a few already. So nothing deal breaking, but yeah, one of the quads I have, immediately the smart audio doesn't work, and there's various other bits that they're still sorting out daily. So if you go to a development build, please know what you're doing, because you've got to assume there could be something more risky there that you might not know about. Nerdcopter said, right motor addresses on paper, then rotate paper, easy. The quality, yeah, that's a great way to do it as well. Yeah, there's a load of ways to do that solution, but if I don't know how many of you guys have ever messed around with the resource mapping before it had this massive recoding of how it was done, but it was horrific. It was such a pain in the bum to do resource mapping and remapping and moving stuff around, and now it is the polar opposite. It's super easy, so you never have to worry if an ESC is the wrong way around or out of whack. It's a very, very simple thing to do. Okay, so we're 15 minutes into this, and I've done exactly nothing with this. This is what I did last night. You see, I ended up having so much fun chatting to you guys that I didn't actually do any building. So let me start assembling this. I think after doing this soldering, everything else is kind of plug and play on this little thing. So it should all be pretty simple from here. Let's get some of these. And this, in terms of this compared to the Tyro 99, it's almost identical in look and design. And there was really nothing wrong with the last one. The only thing I didn't particularly like was dry fitting this for the minute. I didn't like the fact that the VTX was on the top, which is a bit exposed, and I didn't really like that. But this does have the stack height to get the VTX in it as well, so that's a good thing. Okay, so that's not going to clamp the wires, which is good. No problem there. Let's get the flight controller on. And they've gone for an F4 this time. I'm a little disappointed they haven't gone for a MPU 6000 because it's just so bulletproof, the MPU 6000. No, it'll only max out at 8K, but I've got two quads that are running. Actually, one of them's an F3 running the MPU 6000 at 8K, and or 8K, 4K, whatever it was on the F3, but it still flew incredibly. 32 kilohertz gyros, I just think on something like this, these higher frequency vibrations, they're just all a bit more susceptible to it. I mean, there is a bit more in terms of noise suppression taken into consideration on this. And look at that, look, rubber standoffs. Very impressed. M2 rubber standoffs. All my little micro builds have these, get them from Maytech. In fact, all my builds have rubber standoffs on them. They just work so well. And obviously, if I put that down, you can see just how much flex you've got. So on a 32K gyro, that's even more important. But I just think a 32K gyro is a bit of a silly move on anything smaller than like a 4-inch quad. But it's fine. I'm sure it'll be good. The dynamic filtering on Betaflight 4 is absolutely ridiculously good. So handle it. Okay, what else is it? Blood's in the chat. Hey, brother. I'm sure you guys know who he is by now, so especially if you've seen my last video on the Blood's frame, the not the Nemesis, although the Nemesis is one, the Archon V2, which I'm absolutely delighted with. Some different tools. So what other new products are people excited about? I will be doing some more videos on my the radio I'm using the most at the minute, which is the Nirvana, which may surprise a few of you, but I've been getting on absolutely great with that thing. Okay. Richard Warwick says, wasn't this stream on last night? Yes, it was. It was in the small hours, but I thought I'd do another stream as I've got to keep going with this build at a more sensible time and catch a few more of you, as I probably picked up a few more of my American buddies and a few English insomniacs that are up in small hours like me. I don't know if you ever get this, but let me show you something that can happen. Is this standoff is actually bottoming out on this steel screw here, on the metal part of this rubber standoff, and obviously because it's metal, it's going to be a nightmare to actually cut that down. And it's just the way these things are made. Sometimes they come out and they've just got a little bit too much material inside them. So when you actually screw them down, what ends up happening is they don't do all the way up. And of course, you've now got a gap. See that gap in there? I'm not sure how my focus is, but yeah, there's a little gap in there. So what you can do is to get this guy off now. Just get yourself a little micro drill set and actually just take that down the middle. And you can just do it with your hand, but you just spin the drill or press down the drill and then just spin the top. And all you're aiming to do is just pull a little bit of material out of the base of that, and it's usually just from, you know, coming out the mold and not being very nicely formed. And you can see a little bit of dust coming out of that. And if you do it very carefully and make sure the drill's diameter is smaller than the thread, and you won't actually take anything off the thread. And that's usually enough to then be able to get your standoff to go all the way down on the screw. Of course, I won't know. Still needs to do a little bit more on that. All these little build things, after having hundreds of frames through NJ Towers, you end up finding all these funny little workarounds for stuff. Volume should be okay, I think. It might be me. I might be talking a little bit quieter, perhaps, muttering to myself. Mikey Dread says, I cut a sliver of wire silicone and fill the gap. Yeah, you could. I guess the problem with this one, yeah, sometimes that's a good thing to do. If you take some thick AWG wire, you know, this kind of, I don't know, like 14 gauge or whatever gauge you want to use, and you actually take a spare bit of just the silicone and slice it into sections, you end up with really great vibration dampeners. So you can put that between standoffs and stack bits. That works really well. Good tip, Mikey. But the problem is when you have the opposite problem where you haven't got the stack height to keep raising things up, that's when the problem, a little more of a pain doing that. Almost, or maybe I'm okay. There we go. So I can show you that. Hang on, let me just switch to my OBS stream because I'm watching the lag there. Yeah, so you can see there's no gap there now. That's absolutely fine. And then we haven't had to raise anything up. So yeah, there's lots of little things, tiny little drill piece sets, and I always try and pick up any tools. I think I haven't got any interesting little bits and pieces. I spend far too much money on Amazon. I don't know about you guys. So that's our stack done. Where's our VTX? So another improvement on this little beginner build over the Tyro 99 is we now have smart audio, and I know that because the loom that's in here is a 4-pin plug, and of course, apart from power, ground and signal, what would we need that extra green wire for? And that will be for receiving smart audio. So that is good news. Let me just have a look. These both the same connector, because this whole quad is plug and play, which is quite nice. Minimises the soldering for our beginner friends, which is always good. Now I wonder if they've, because on the last one you kind of couldn't plug things in. All the pins were different numbers, so you couldn't kind of mess it up. And I think what we have here, it looks like the ESC stack goes to this top block, so that's the only one that has however many pins that is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 4 at the front. Looks like we've got 5 on the side, and then 3 at the back. So yeah, they are all different, which is good. So you can't mess that up. I don't think. You just check that one and this one. Is that 4? Oh no, maybe you can. Maybe that is 2 sets of 4. Okay, so the one on the side, can't see any labelling. Let's have a look under the microscope. Microscope, I've got one of those. Magnifying glass, that's what I meant. You know what? I'm not sure which one of those that's going to go on. He wants to run off to the Banggood product page for me and see if they can find out which one of these two is. You're involved now. You're part of my review video, guys. Come on, help NJ out. So it's going to be one of these two. It's either this one at the front next to the connector that goes to the ESC at the bottom, or it's the one at the side. I would imagine the one at the front, if they've designed this sensibly, would be the connector for the camera. That would make the most sense. So it'd be camera at the front, and then the side one being the only. I'm going to wager that the side one here is going to be the one for the VTX. Of course, I'm not going to apply to power to anything until I'm absolutely sure of that, but I reckon that's what we're talking about. Pins are labelled, sadly, but that will go on the top like that. If you've got a bit of slack with wires, we twist them up because that helps keep the RF noise down. And they are silicone wires on the connectors at least, thank God. So we do that. Which way up? Can we get away with that way up, or is that going to interfere with the block beneath it? Nope, it's going to interfere. So we can rotate it that way. The antenna going that way keeps the antenna a bit shorter. I reckon that's a better decision. Nope, can't do that. How way can we rotate this VTX? It's not ideal. Could sideways that. You route these inside. Miss each other. Yes, they do, but a component there hitting a block. Got to be one way around this thing will play ball. This way. That's unusual. So that means we can't have the antenna coming out on the top. Have to go up what I would consider upside down. Probably that way around. That put our button. Well, the button's on the side, so that doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's the only way it goes on the stack, where we aren't actually problem. I mean, that's fine, but the only thing I don't like about having it that way around is the antenna, micro UFL, is on the underside of that VTX board, which is, if it, I mean, it's protected, I suppose, but if it popped off, that would be an absolute pig to put one back on. Really, you want it the other way up, but you've got tool components on here which are connecting with these blocks, so you can't actually mount it this way up without problem. Go that way, go that way, go that way. Cable will reach that way. Anyway. No. No is the answer to that. It will have to go upside down. What else have we got going on in the chat? Being NJ, do you think you should have some background tunes on? Bet his playlist rocks. I did think about putting some tunes on, but then I thought, you know, most of you guys, if you're following along, you've probably got your own tunes going on. I thought I wouldn't do that so that you can have your own music happening. Andrea says, better not talk about money spent on Amazon and Banggood. Yeah, tell me about it. Tom Allsop just got here. What are we building? Yes, the Tyro 79. We're just putting that together and spotting the flaws and bits. Once it's together, I'll be finishing the review. I've done most of it and talking about what I think, and then we'll go out and give it a rip. D3 code. All of my friends I fly with look at my clockwise, counterclockwise motors like there's some ancient forgotten technology. Surprised to see them on the Tyro 99. Yeah, I talked about this earlier. It's just it is a kind of old thing, and you don't really need it. I mean, the biggest problem is it's not that you couldn't locate the nuts if you needed to replace a nut, but if you damage a motor, the motor's threading is also the other way around as well. So if one particular, say like the reverse thread one goes out of stock and you need to replace it, you can't just buy a motor from stock. You've got to wait for that specific motor with the threading to come along. And I just feel the whole thing's kind of unnecessary. As long as you add knurling to the base of a motor, compression alone will make sure that the prop doesn't slip. And that's what nearly all motor manufacturers do these days. Occasionally, I'll still see Emax do it. It always makes me laugh because they did it on. Let me see what was the model. I brought it out last night. Actually, no, they didn't do it on one of their models, and it was the only one where they didn't do the counterclockwise motors, threading rather. Yeah, it was this. I bought this out last night. This old Beast X, these White Series Emax motors. So my biggest complaint about this was they all clockwise threaded, which is great, but they forgot to knurl the base. So on a few occasions, the prop would slip and throw the nut off. And I actually have a video somewhere. And I actually got in the freeze frame of the GoPro footage the moment when you see the nut going one way and the prop going the other. Made for some awesome footage. But yeah, as long as you knurl the base, compression alone with a locking nut on top, and you will not have a problem. It's just easy, and then you always just pick up a motor. You don't have to worry about stocking two different types of the same motor. Tom says, I'm still using directional red bottoms on one of my quads. Yeah, the red bottoms are great. Emax motors last. I've never really had a problem with them in terms of their durability. Even on some of my oldest quads, the bearings, the build is still good. They're good motors. Mikey Dread says NJ side 4-pin for VTX and front is for cam. So they did do it the right way around, and we did make the right guess. So yeah, it's this chap on the side. Like I said, the only thing that's a bit annoying is you have to have this IPEX underneath, because any other way you put this round with the IPEX on top, one of these tool components interferes with all these different high connectors on the board. So sadly, there's no kind of way. You can see it's not sat there evenly on top because it's resting on a component. So that's a bit of a shame, but it's not the end of the world. You know, for 79 bucks, this is mental. I was talking about this last night. My first build cost me hundreds, and it flew like rubbish. People don't realise how good this stuff flies for almost no money these days. First person queue, man, I'm a sucker for anodized aluminium. Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, it does look good, doesn't it? You know, see any of my real take my time builds, I'll flash it again just for anyone new that's come along. But there's two builds that I did recently. This one hasn't actually. This is on my Insta, but yeah, this is a build that I really took my time over to make as beautiful as possible. Yeah, so I really went with even down to the purple colour matched hardware there. That came out beautifully. That's the Nemesis, and then of course my Archon, wherever that is. I can't see the wood for the trees here. Oh, it's presenting itself in a minute. Here it is, and then the Archon, yeah, with the colour matching on that's come out really good. So yeah, hopefully we're going to get some good footage of this one flying soon. And look, even the camera. It's the new Sparrow 2 Pro. No, it's not that new, but great camera, proper full-size M12 lens on it as well. Excited to get out and do some more flying with that guy, so I can bring you some footage on it. If there's anything else you want to know about it, other than what we're working on the bench here, let me know. Riddler, that quad's so nice. Love the motors. Yeah, the Zing motors are great, and there's a whole bunch of them here. So yeah, those were the we were talking a little bit about KV earlier, but those are the 2306. It was actually Bloods that convinced me to do this, to give it a go, because I always stick at 2450 kV. But yeah, these are the 2750 2306, and they've been fantastic. Propped correctly, they are a wonderful motor. That feels great. But yeah, we have the 2208, which are the monster tool stator, the green Zings, and I've also got some 1700 kV. Let me grab them. Give you a quick flash while we're here. Bags of Zings here. I did flash these last night, but for the benefit of some of you guys that are here, you've got, there's the 2208. Nice tool stator, beautiful, impossibly close air gap, nice arc magnets, and hopefully good bearings that are going to last. But yeah, there's an example what I was talking about with the knurling. You can see this 5-spoke knurling around the base. Once a prop's on top of that, just the compression of the nut will hold that, and doesn't matter which way it's rotating, it's not going to go anywhere. But yeah, the 2208s in green look beautiful, but I'll have to find a way to get a build to match that colour scheme, because that looks absolutely beautiful. So we've got those, and we've also got these in this bag, which are these are the 2207s, I think. Yeah, so these are the 2207 Zing, which are in red, and there's the KV, which is 1700 kV. So there will be a new mystery frame coming in the not too distant future, which these will be going on for a 6S build. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun to see how those perform. So yeah, we've got some good Zing stuff here. We have as well from them, iFlight sent me a 6S stack, and another micro stack actually, because in both of my Halo frames, including this one, actually even in my 6-inch, this is all 20 by 20 hardware, and it's getting so good. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys caught my 4-part review on the HGLRC F440 V2 micro stack. That took an entire breath to say, but that ended up going into my 6-inch Archon, and got tested all the way up to 5S. So we took a 6-inch quadcopter, we put a 20 by 20 micro stack in it, and we flew it up to 5S, and it completely held up with no problems. This is going to dwarf the camera now. So there's the, you see, it almost looks comical, this tiny little 20 by 20 stack in the middle of a 6-inch quad. But if you look at my Betaflight 4 flight video, this was the one that was doing most of the flying. If you look closely, you'll actually see at the footage there is two colours of TPU just in shot of the GoPro, so you can just see the edges of the surround. If you see yellow, you're seeing the 6-inch flying. If you see red, you're seeing the 5-inch flying. So you'll see a lot of that was actually freestyle done with the 6-inch, and it flew amazingly on Betaflight 4. So Betaflight 4 is working great on 6-inch quads too. First person queue, what are the catches we should know about if we were to purchase this item? So if we're talking about this little guy, this little 3-inch Tyro, the review video is almost done, as in I may even get it out tonight. So I'll go into all those details in the review video. But I'm just trying to think the ones that, I mean, it's hard for me to say until I've flown this. It'll be a 2-part video because there's obviously the build, and I've got my opinions on various bits of the build and what I think they've actually listened to and addressed and what they haven't addressed that I still think, you know, things like the plastic motor wires. I mean, they're niggles, little tiny niggly problems that aren't, like, they're not deal breaking for $79. There's only one thing in this kit that was deal breaking, because I said in my original Tyro 99 video, the one thing you've got to change, because it was probably old stock and just a piece of, you know, rubbish, was the camera. And that's why I said you couldn't really call it a Tyro 99, because that camera was so awful. It was it was the bottleneck of the whole thing that because it was the bottleneck, it kind of ruined the experience for me. So the camera was the only bit that really let it down. So you had to really buy a camera to go with the Tyro 99. I ended up putting a little Runcam Swift that I had laying around in it, and that sorted the problem out. In fact, I've got it. Oh, there's literally a quad Jenga behind me. I've got to be very careful removing stuff. Here we go. So there's the original Tyro 99. So you can see I stuck a Swift in there, a little micro Swift, and that made it so much better. And that's if you search Tyro 99 in Thingiverse, that's the GoPro mount that comes with it. And this flew great on a GoPro mount, with a GoPro mount on it, and the GoPro didn't have any problems lifting that. Actually flew really well, that quadcopter. No problem freestyling with it. But yeah, so where I was going with that is the one thing in the kit that I'm disappointed to see. I mean, seriously, that's just jokes, isn't it? Bullnose props. I mean, that is like all that will do, especially for a beginner, because it's beginner focused or it's budget focused. But it is designed to make it easy for people to get into it. You know, there's only that base bit of soldering, and then the rest is plug and play. You want an efficient setup, and the motors, like in terms of the kV they chose for the 99 and for this, because that's not a high kV setup at all. It's just under mid-range really if you're running on 4S. It's going to run efficiently, and then this just destroys all efficiency. Now what you're doing is you're going to have, you know, crazy power, but about a minute and a half of it. But they're just terrible. Bullnose props are awful, and they're very noisy. And the noise is actually a dead giveaway of how inefficient they are spinning. That's a very good giveaway of an inefficient, incredibly efficient props are actually very, very quiet. So yeah, some Dal props. Actually, where's the ones I've got on the other 3-inch I showed you earlier? These are the ones I tend to use on my 3-inch props. These are great. They've got really nice rake, nice profile, nice camber, nice everything. That is a it's T3056C. Yeah, that's an awesome little prop. Super efficient as well. I get really good flight times on this on 4S. But yeah, these are horrible. But at least it's the cheapest thing in the kit, you know. That can just throw those in the bin. They're hilarious. That's really the only thing at the minute. I don't know until we get it plugged up what the quality of this camera is going to be like, but it looks a bit like a little Runcam clone type thing. But I'm hoping they've chosen wisely here. It doesn't look like it's not potentially old stock. That's what I always worry about with Eachine packages like this. I mean, this was very easily. I wouldn't be at all surprised if this was something that was laying around in the warehouse and someone in the design team said, "Hey, we happen to have about 1 million of these sitting in old stock that we can't get rid of. Can we throw it in the package?" I can see that conversation happening, and that's why that ends up in the box. But this obviously is not the case. I think that was the case with the camera on the 99 as well. It just seemed like a really old style, old technology, horrible light handling, horrible wide dynamic range camera. This seems more promising, and it does have a 2.1mm lens on it, which is great. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's just a kind of a run cam type clone. But again, I can't speak to the effect of how good that is until we get it plugged up and we go out and fly it. So there's a few unknowns here. So you're going to need to wait until I actually put the thing in the air, but it's pretty good. JDog5343, NJ, my man, how's it hanging? Glad to see you back on the live chat. Hey JDog, good to see you back, dude. Thanks for coming and hanging out last night and keeping me company. So we got. What does Nerdcopter say? Oh, so the shaft's stronger than the Tachyon. Anyone know? Using a titanium mix, Tachyon is soft. Until I've actually no, you know, I have already crashed the Archon V2 pretty fast and hard. I've seen no deformation of anything, all the bearings, but there's still a new motor, and I still need a bit of time with them to be able to speak to the effects of the durability. Most motors these days, I don't find that the shaft ever deforms. It's usually my biggest gripe is bearings. I hate when bearings go bad early on motors. And I don't know what we're going to get in this as well. I hope, again, it was something I fed back to Eachine about the Tyro. I said the motors are actually pretty decent, good job, but the bearings are complete trash. Please put some better bearings in. I never crashed the Tyro 99, and the bearings sound rough as hell, which I just think isn't terribly good. I don't think I can actually give you the sound of this down my mic, maybe. Wonder. One of these is real bad. No, I think my mic isn't going to pick it up. But yeah, one of the bearings on the Tyro 99 is super rough, and the thing's never crashed. So you know that's not good enough. Hopefully they've put some nice bearings in here, but they are C-clipped. It's a little more understandable when you're going down to smaller motors to use C-clips, but a hollow shaft and a screw at this size is certainly doable. I'm sure there are some brother hobbies at this size that use a screw and hollow shaft. Just makes things a little bit easier. And hollow shaft is actually torsionally, it's actually stronger than a solid shaft is. Some physics behind that, but at least they're open design, so you can get in and clean them quite easily. That's always a good thing. Obviously, you can see there's plenty of clearance between the screws and the base of the windings. But yeah, they're okay. Are they arced? Are the magnets arced? They're all tricky to say. I think they are. Not a particularly impressive air gap, but they feel decent enough. I'm sure they'll perform just fine. Like I said, you've got to curb the criticism to a certain point when you're talking about a $79 build. Okay. Is anyone flying this weekend? That's what I want to know. I myself would like to fly, but I haven't actually checked the weather to see what we've got. And it's not going to be wonderful. One thing with micro builds I hate always how tiny the screws are. The top part of the stack, so it's all fine. We'll screw on once these are on. J-Dog says, supposed to snow here in Oklahoma, so I hope I can get out before it comes and rip a couple. Man, I'd be up for doing a bit of snow flying. Let's get the conformal coat out. Make sure the quad's protected and go and get some nice, beautiful, snowy, scenic shots. I don't know if maybe you get a lot of that and that's boring for you guys now, but I really enjoy getting snow footage. It's the only time I'm happy to brave the cold, because most of the time I hate the cold. Nerdcopter, rain expected, so much rain lately now, I'm actually achieving flight. Enemy FPV planning. Andrea says, I'd like to fly, but weather here is crap in Devon. Oh, you're down in Devon? That's a nice part of the world. I like Devon. Big old drive. Lots of A and B roads to get down where you are, but beautiful part of the world. Maybe Sunday. Don't have to crash as it's all mud. Yeah, that's the worst, isn't it? Mud is not good. I'll still take mud over concrete. D3 code says, love conformal coating. Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, if you haven't actually got conformal coating, can use, some people do use nail varnish, and you're getting a fairly similar result, to be honest with you, but I would rather use the proper stuff. Both conformal coating and nail varnish will burn off with the soldering iron, so it's not really a problem. But I think conformal coating's got a bit more elasticity to it, so whereas I find most nail varnishes can be very brittle, so they can take a shock and they just split like glass, you know, they just sort of shatter. Whereas the conformal coating will have more of a lacquer type of effect and stay down better. But it's not cheap stuff, but you wouldn't care about that if it saved you after you crashed into water. Ask me how I know. J-Dog says, guess it's better. Do you conformal coat all your electronics just in case you fly in the elements? I've been a bit lazy lately with doing that, but with the weather being the way it is and being winter, there's every chance that I will. If I know I'm going out to fly somewhere where it's going to be there's potential for moisture to mess with us, then yes, 100% I will conformal coat. But yeah, I remember crashing. I had a QAV 250, so we're going back a few years here, and I crashed it into a ditch, and I knew there was water in that ditch because I could hear it. And as I got down to it, I could see it in the water, but I couldn't get to it, and all I could see is the red LEDs glowing from under the water, and then loads of these little tiny mini fish just swimming around it. That actually looked quite cool, sat there illuminated, and the fish seemed to enjoy the light. But by the time I got it out, it just fried everything. The ESCs went. The flight controller was, I think, the only thing that survived. No, the flight controller and at the time, my HD camera was a Mobius. Who remembers the Mobius HD camera? Anyone start with one of those? Well, it was ruined, and I took it apart and put it in the drying cupboard, and it just came back to life after enough time sat there drying out. One of the things that you should keep on you at all times if you're a quad builder is this stuff. Well, this is I've decanted decanted it, but let me see if I can find it. Most of you will know what I'm about to point out, but you can get it on Amazon. Is this stuff isopropyl alcohol, 99.9%. I mean, anything above like 85% is good enough, but this stuff is just so useful if you're dealing with any electronics. If you want to clean anything, you want to get in with a toothbrush and you want to soak it and start brushing stuff out, just use isopropyl alcohol. I've got it put into one of these little spray bottles, so it's nice and easy to work on. It's nice and easy to use when I'm working on bits and pieces, but you should all have isopropyl alcohol. It's just wonderful stuff, and it's a great isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush, and you scrub away at. I've used it to repair iPhones before that have ones that have ended up like falling down the toilet. Not one that was not a toilet that had been used, thankfully, but ended up opening the iPhone up and cleaning it with isopropyl alcohol and the toothbrush, and the whole thing came back to life and worked. Still going to this day, I think. It's just wonderful stuff. Mini-Me FPV, did you try Racecraft 6032 propellers? No, I've never really got on with the Racecraft props, but I'm not a racer really. And a 6032, that'd probably overprop just about most of the quads that I run with and use. So that's probably not a propeller I'd look at. But I'm sure there are plenty of racers out there that could give you some feedback on that. Might be something that BMS Web, because my first set of Racecraft props I was given when I was in Australia, and I was hanging out with Thomas and Paul Bitmarter, BMS Web, and yeah, they gave me a set of those to play with. But I know Thomas flew on them for quite a while. He really liked the Racecraft stuff. But then he is one fast pilot, as fast as it gets. Yeah, I'm really liking this. It's nice plug and play. Look at that, nice floating stack on top. I mean, that's just mental what you're getting for $79. That's just crazy. I've got a feeling when we put these side plates on, those standoffs are going to get in the way, aren't they? Yeah, so let's clip those down. They're too long. Mr. Fruity Cake says, good for cleaning your 3D print bed too. Absolutely. That's why I've been going through so much of this stuff. Isopropyl alcohol is fantastic for getting all the oils, greases, and God knows what that comes away from your print bed. I have a new 3D printer coming for review as well. They like my last review so much they've sent me sent me another one. I'm quite excited to be doing a little bit more on the 3D printing stuff. I mean, let me give you an example of how seriously I've been taking the tuning for my TPU settings. Are you ready for this? Just hours and hours of reprinting to experiment with cooling to get all my GoPro mounts to be of a certain consistency. I tried different cooling strategies to get the TPU to a different, like how rubbery it was. So this is this is all the same filament, but it's how you cool it as you print it that makes how flexible it is. And this one, for instance, is very flexible, and this one is absolutely solid as a rock. And it's all down to the part cooling and how you manage that as you print. And you can, I know you can kind of see they're actually a different color almost. That was all done by the cooling as I was printing it. But the one I love is how this one, because it's come out really solid, but just the right amount of flex. But yeah, I just kept printing until I got the results I wanted. So yeah, it's a little bit down to the filament. So actually the best results I got on TPU was actually with zero cooling. That gave me the strongest, which makes sense because it's the same for PETG and PLA. When you print it, if you use very minimal cooling, you'll end up with a better bond as the layers stack up, and that gets you stronger parts. Frank says isopropyl alcohol is great for removing hot glue from your stuff. Absolutely. Yeah, it's just wonderful stuff. I always have isopropyl alcohol. It's my go-to cleaner for everything. Andrea, please share your TPU settings for the Ender 3. I'm still tweaking them a little bit, but I will quite happily do that. In fact, if you want me to send you a profile, just drop me an email. If you go to the About section on my YouTube, one of my the YouTube tabs, you can see my email address in there. If you just drop me an email, I'll email you back my current Cura settings if you want them, and you can try them out and see how you get on with them. But the main thing is not to go too crazy on the retraction, because when you retract TPU, the best way to think about TPU filament is on a Bowden tube extruder is it's like trying to push rope. Obviously, if you do it too fast, it'll end up just knotting up. Nighthawk FPV, love that solder stand. Yeah, so that's another thing that I printed for the TS100. Again, done on the Ender 3, and it's just 2 parts that you print. You print it that way up. You don't need supports for anything. And yeah, it just all slotted together like that, and then your TS. Oh no, put it on upside down. Hang on. Put it on like so. And then your TS100 just slots in like that, and that's with PLA. It doesn't need to be a high temperature filament, because any of you that's got a TS100 knows this part of the heat is very localized to the tip, which is great. So even if you accidentally touch there, you don't end up burning yourself. It's actually just fine. So yeah, just standard PLA for that, and you end up with quite a nice stand. And of course you can swivel this round to be left or right sided, because I'm a left-hander. So I have mine this side and pop it in like that. But yeah, that's another Thingiverse file. D3 says, are you using a filament guide mod on the Ender 3? No, I'm not actually. What I decided to do was test the TPU filament that I had. I thought I'll give it a go and see whether I need to do the mod. I know the mod you're talking about, the one where you cut a small piece of PTFE into a little kind of snake's head triangle, which goes right up to the feeder gear to stop the filament from kind of coming out and causing knots at where the extruder gear is. But I didn't need to do that at all. This particular filament I got, which I can't remember what it is. It's not Ninja Flex. It was a far cheaper make, but that happened to be fine. But yeah, you can do the mod to make your life a bit easier with a Bowden Tube 3D printer. TPU is the main reason I'm thinking of doing a direct drive mod on the Ender 3, says Mute FPV. It should improve TPU printing a lot. A direct drive mod will make any 3D printer print better. There's no question direct drive's better than Bowden. But saying that, the only thing that you do have to be careful of is when you're mounting a whole other stepper motor onto the x-axis, you're adding a lot of weight, and therefore you're adding inertia to the print head. And so you have to adjust your jerk and acceleration settings for the x-axis, because if you don't get that right, you'll get misstepping. So the overall impact of going direct drive is you might get away with it, and you might be able to stay with the settings you have, or you might find that you have to reduce certain settings, which does slow your print down a little bit. But you're absolutely right. You'll get better results for sure. Al Wishy FPV, hey man. NJ knows a really funny story about demoisturizing filament. Yes, I'm still waiting to see a picture of the result. So my buddy Al Wishy went and decided to dry his filament out in the oven to get the moisture out of it, because that's what you do. You remove the moisture and you get a better quality print, because all filaments tend to absorb a bit of moisture. So he put his 3 spools of filament into the oven, and his oven, I think he'd set it for 30 degrees for an hour or something, and his oven was one of those fancy new ovens that decided it detected that it was a chicken in the oven because of the weight, and then upped the temperature to 150 degrees for an hour. So what he pulled out wasn't a cooked chicken, and it wasn't 3 rolls of dry filament. I imagine it was one giant nasty blob of PLA. But I'm very interested to see the picture. Ouch, 3 rolls of, was that 3 kilograms of filament? I bet that's not cheap. Dear, oh dear. So where's the connector for the loom? I promise you guys I'm normally considerably faster than this at building. It's just because we're chatting away, which I obviously love. Always good to chat to you guys. You need to send me the pic and I'll show everyone, Al. Yeah, so yeah, send it to me on my phone. I can't wait to see the picture of what that blob of filament looks like. I do really like the smaller copters as well. I mean, I don't know where we'll end up, the way things are. Whether certainly in the UK, whether it might be that this new drone law stuff ends up that most of us end up running away from 5-inch and go down to the smaller quads. It's all just speculation. It might just be the media will get bored, leave us alone, and we can just carry on doing what we're doing. But if we do end up going down to the smaller stuff, I'm not as bothered as I used to be about it. With things like the new Foxeer Mix, the Turtles, the Split V2, with that technology coming out, I'm not saying it's as good as running a GoPro, but it's getting great, and it will only get better. So we're going to get great HD recording on sub 250 drones, and the sub 250 multi rotors are getting great too. I mean, I've put a few those out of like 2-inch quads where I've had people say, what 5-inch quad was this? And I'm like, dude, it's a 2-inch quad. They totally can fly and do all the same maneuvers as their bigger brothers. So I'm glad it's an area that is still being developed and still popular. So there's one more plug in there, which has to be for the camera. And I'm guessing the other one is, why have we got 3 in here? Let's have a look at these. That's always the receiver, isn't it? I forgot this thing doesn't come with a receiver. I'm going to have to find a receiver kicking around. I'm sure I've got a couple of XM Plus receivers here somewhere. That's what that will be for. It looks like we've got a spare 4-pin to 4-pin, but there's nothing. It's unusual with that. We wouldn't want to use that on the VTX because that would be not utilizing smart audio, so no kind of need for that. This one, that looks like our standard camera. That has to be the camera one, and you can just tell because when it goes into the camera block, first pin on the left is power. You always have power first on the left, then ground, then video. So that's our camera cable. So let me just twist this up. Said it earlier, always twist your wires up, help keep the RF noise down. Okay, so our connector at the back then is going to be the one for our S-Bus receiver. And I did spot on here, in case anyone was interested, that on the flight controller, it's buried under the VTX now, but the flight controller did have a TX and RX breakout, so you could utilize that for something else you wanted to wire on here. Say you wanted to wire a GPS, like I did on this guy, you need to utilize a spare UART. You need both the receive and the send, so you could. This does have the UART available if you want to put something else in there, or even Crossfire. If you want to run Crossfire, you could use the UART for that. Don't know how many people are running Crossfire on the small stuff, but it's doable. Frank says the scary part of the UK registrations, etc. How poorly that couple were treated by the police, even though they were innocent. No, they will have a list of people to point the finger at. Yeah, it's concerning. I mean, there's two sides to it in the fact that they weren't scapegoated in as much as the police released them and justice was done in as far as they weren't guilty of it, and they at least no one went down for it. Wrongfully, so I'm glad for that, and I'm glad to see in the interview with the police that it was they admitted that maybe they're not even looking for a drone after all of that. You'll notice that didn't get a lot of publicity because that's what the media do. They, after all the the media are in the wrong, really. We know that they're the people that cause all this hysteria. They're the guys that quite illegally published their details. That was totally out of order of them to do that. And I dare say that couple will be able to sue them for quite a lot of money for doing whichever paper thought that was funny. So yeah, it's sort of tragic, really. But we've had this before where drones have been accused of stuff, and then it ends up the first time it turned out being a plastic bag. But again, was it brought up and reported? Of course not. It's just a buzzword, and the press are having an absolute field day with it at the minute. It's just not much we can do. But it does sort of mean for us guys in the UK, we just, have to be kind of squeaky clean with what we're doing at the minute, because any excuse and the press will be all over us, which completely sucks. Place this in. So anyone considering 6S or already rocking 6S? It's going to be a few weeks before I do my build, but I'm quite excited to try it out and see what I make of it for freestyle. Al says I have a 6S 6-inch Archon. Wow. Well, I've tried the Archon up to 5S, and funnily enough, HGLRC, after I did my tests and scared the life out of them, they ended up, well, the first thing they did, they changed it on the website. Instead of 2 to 4S, they changed it 2 to 5S after I published my videos with the results. But they did then come back to me again and said, "Oh, we've tested it some more. We think you can do a 6S test." And I was like, "I'm done doing videos for you guys. I've done 4 videos testing your stuff. We can leave it there. The stack's good." But it did make me laugh. It made me laugh that they were telling me this stuff after I came back with results. I'm like, well, didn't you R&D any of this? Didn't you test any of this stuff first? Why am I telling you information and doing testing for you, and then you go and change the stats on your website after seeing my videos? I was like, you guys should know this. Like, you should know the specs of your stuff. I mean, yeah, I endorse it. I think it's good. I'll recommend that stack to people, but I shouldn't be doing your R&D for you. And I bet you if I ended up doing all the success tests on that stack and it came back good, they'd change the marketing page again and make it up to success. I guarantee it. But Fitz at HGLRC is a nice enough guy. He was pretty cool to talk to, and I don't mind working with anyone as long as they're receptive to feedback. I do hate it when you get sent something and you feed back about it, and if they don't like what they hear, they just stop talking to you or just outright refuse to listen. It's just you've got to listen to improve the design and stuff. I mean, that's why it always makes me angry when I see really obvious mistakes made on products, because I just sit there and think all your R&D team had to do was speak to any FPV pilot, any of us, one conversation, or even just put the product in front of them and say, what do you think of that? Any of you guys would, there's at least 4 or 5 things you'd immediately spot and save them a bunch of money. But you see it time and time again. Mikey says, I'm very happy with 4S. Eventually I will make the move to 6, but not now until I need new lipos. Yeah, I still think 4S is the sweet spot for 5-inch quads, especially for freestyle. And that's why I promote that whole thing of propping your motor correctly. It's so important you put the correct pitch prop and you don't over prop the motor. And when you do that and you get it right, you'll have all the power you need and you'll have an efficient setup. As I said, my V1 heavy arc, quite heavy Archon. Actually, let me grab it, see what the motors are. I think they're the returners. There it is. So my V1 Archon. This was a beautiful build as well. This still flies great. This is not a light quad by any means, especially with a 1500 battery and the GoPro in there, and V1S 4.8. So they're my favourites on this quad. Performs beautifully, but it's it's got some weight to it, and on that setup, as I said, I get about, if I'm just doing general freestyling, like not ripping everywhere, but the kind of freestyle I do in most of my videos, I've had days where this will go 4.5 minutes of flight time and all the power I need. It's like 4S can totally deliver what you need, but we always want more. More is more, right? And it would be fun to try out some success stuff, just to have the to the moon power. It'd be interesting see how this camera is set up, if at all, because there's no OSD cable with it. It does appear like it's got the pin for OSD, and then you'd have to take a shared ground off that connector to actually get it to work. But soon, like, I would hate it if they've supplied this but they've left wide dynamic range off or something like that. That would be such a fail. Little details like that can get left out, but hopefully they've got all that right from the off. I'll plug it in and it will just look good and work. It's looking quite cute, isn't it? Nice tidy little stack, plug and play, going together all right. The other thing I mentioned this in the review actually is cheap carbon. Like, there's nothing wrong with this carbon, it's fine, it's going to do its job, but they're never machined well, and you can see all kinds of hitting and nastiness on the edges. So just do yourself a favour, grab yourself, you should have one of these in your tool bag anyway, but get yourself a needle file, nice and fine. You can get sets of these for like a tenner, they're not very much. And then just with a cup of water, wet the needle so we don't get carbon dust in the air while we're doing it, and just do a 45-degree on all the edges where you might come into contact, like here, with any motor wires, because sharp edges. In fact, you remember the original Impulse Alien? When you bought that kit, they used to come with one of these. And now, as sort of carbon frames become more popular, you tend to see the machining quality. These things they arrive with nice edges on the real decent quality stuff. But on the cheaper stuff like this, it never a bad idea to get the carbon and just take any sharp edges off. Nerdcopter, thanks for the stream. Bye now. Take care, man. Oh, Wishy says, I remember when everyone was 3S. Yeah, totally. I think I did actually start on 4S, but the quad I had was running 9-inch props, so it was the right voltage for the quad at the time. But Sicro says, I've got a year-old 4S 1500 that's still good. My 1000 6S haven't lasted 3 months. Well, yeah, I still think they're kind of finding the sort of sweet spot for the 6S. The problem is, as you go up in voltage, you require less amps. So you can kind of go down in cell density as you go up in voltage, which is a good thing, and it's something that you kind of have to do, because if you remained with the cell density, like the higher the density of the cell, the higher the C rating, but the physically bigger the cell is. So that's why your 1500 cells versus your 1000 cells, you'll notice they're completely different in size. The 1500 cells are going to be big, thick, and or if you took two 1500 4S cells, but one's a 95C and one's a 30C, again, you'll see a thickness difference, a density difference. And the problem is with those 6S packs, you're going for these lower density cells because you've gone up in voltage, but you're still in danger of the actual lifespan of those cells is going to be shorter for sure, unless you're running a higher density cell. So the higher density cells are always going to win in terms of how long they're going to last. Unless you go for the other way to do it is going for an increase in capacity, but then you're taking the weight of the pack up, and there's a point of diminishing returns where you're taking the cell weights up so much that you're kind of negating the extra power that you're putting in, or you're just taking the amp draw up. It's a lot of moving goalposts, and I still think they haven't quite fine-tuned where that all needs to be. And it's a balancing game. Everything, a lot of quads are all built with 4S in mind and built to weight around a 1500 4S. So yeah, it's a big old game. But yeah, the other thing is selection. There's not an awful lot of selection of 6S packs out there for mini quads at the minute. 6S is a very common voltage for RC helicopters. In fact, I shall show you a 6S pack. I've got one here that is off one of my helicopters. That is a 6S pack. What do you reckon, guys? Reckon we can strap that to it? That should do it. How do you reckon that'll work out? Yeah, this is a Turnigy 5 amp 6S pack, and this runs my Mikado Logo 550, which is an absolutely enormous beast of a helicopter, and that's 60 to 120C discharge. But yeah, I mean, this is actually, where are my scales hiding? I could even give you a weight of this just to give you an idea of the difference. I've got a load of these helicopter packs, but I use them to run my TS100 soldering iron, and I use them for charging in the field. I can get lots of charges out of that into my using a little ISDT field charger. So I can go out with like 10 packs and just cycle them around and keep charging with this guy. How much does that thing weigh? 904 grams. That's quite a lot. Yeah, that's that can handle some discharge. You could probably start a tank engine with that. That'll give you enough torque to your starter motor. D3 code. My friend flew 16,000, or 16 amp. 16 amp 6S pack on his quad once. Did some flips. Yeah. I imagine the motors were crying. Yeah, I guess it's down to purpose. I could certainly, my 6-inch Archon, I could definitely run much higher capacity on that. That easily lifts much bigger packs, and I could fly for 10, probably 10 to 15 minutes on the right battery. Really don't think that'd be difficult at all. So let's get this little antenna. These are the longer screws for this bit. Did I see Curry Kitten in here? Yeah, I did. I'm not here for long. My 79 is in the post, so I try not to watch anyone else before I get my own. Okay, I'll need to get one of those plugins where I can pixelate an area for you. Don't look directly at it, Curry. Yeah, this little mount here is similar to the Tyro 99. But obviously this comes with just a standard dipole antenna to go through like that, so it's more of a guide really, but I guess that's fine. You can have it coming out the top or the other way up. Maybe the other way up would look a bit cleaner. Like so. Or you could mount an SMA in there, I guess. Probably got a few options. We'll go with that for now. It looks like an SMA diameter to me. Not sure. But again, it's just more. You might as well run with a dipole and use one of Greg's excellent Bandicoots. I've got plenty of quads which I do that with. I've no problem at all running linear. Doesn't bother me. I started on circular polarized, and I assumed linear was always going to be terrible until I started flying linear with a good diversity receiver setup on my goggles, and then it's like, well, this is still brilliant. Doesn't matter anymore. Only really an issue for you guys who do lots of indoor racing. That's where your multipathing can get pretty horrible. So really, thing I've got to worry about here now is grabbing a receiver. So I forgot this doesn't come with a receiver. Yeah, I would imagine I'm going to rob, or let's see if I've got an XM Plus lying around, because this is definitely a candidate for a slight receiver. But I never use the XM. Can't stress enough. Put receivers in quads that you're flying outdoors and not in a sports hall. Please go diversity. My other pet hate is when people put two antennas out the back like that. That drives me mental. Please put them at 45 degrees to each other. That if you put them like that, you're completely defeating the point of diversity. The idea is as one goes out of polarization, the other one comes into polarization. That is how you get fantastic range on your quadcopter. But both your antennas up out the back, it might look really cool and like you're flying a little cricket, but it completely defeats the point of diversity. What are we saying in here? Still using Menace antennas. Yes, I absolutely love my Menace antennas, as I do Greg. I'm, well, after yesterday's debacle, I'm very, very disappointed in some of the things that Alex Greaves said. Conduct himself in a professional manner, I think. I was very upset with some of the things I heard him say. Very unnecessary. But there you go. Just going to go So it's going to go that way around. This plate on the top. I mean, I've got reviewed, tested many antennas. I've got I've just got boxes of them back here. Tons of tidy boxes all kicking around, and they're all just full of loads of different antennas. And there are ones that are always in my bag, and the ones that always come away with me everywhere are my Menace, the Bandicoot, the Pico, and the Invader are always in my bag because they just work and they're good. And there's such a good price point as well. Well, it's not really much more to do with this little thing. It's a real cutie though. The main thing I'm pleased at is that they actually got the whole stack in there this time. Because on the last one, as I said, the VTX had to sit on top on the outside of the frame, which is not ideal. And this time they've addressed that, which is good. Oh, I've missed it. XM works fine for short range stuff like whoops for me. Yep, I totally agree, Frank. Yeah, the short range stuff it's fine, but I would never put an XM on a large quad or any kind of quad like this that I'd be flying outside and around trees and things like that. I've had XM Plus fail on me so many times. And then once I've lost confidence in the range of a quad, it affects the way I fly, and the best of my flying quickly diminishes because it's in the back of my head that if I go around that tree and that fail safes, I'll end up in the branch, and that's it. This is one of the reasons why I fly Crossfire on my bigger quads. I just never have to think or worry about range problems or dropouts. You remove those things from your head or from the back of your head, remove problems, your best flying will come out. So you're undistracted. Yeah, we've almost got it looking like a quad now. Let's put a couple more of these screws in, put the other little bits on. So I just have to put a receiver in, but I mean, that's pretty much it. If I hadn't been gassing, this is literally a 10-minute build. There's nothing to it at all. But gotta admit, for I mean, I would just have loved this as a first quad. $79. That is just mental. I'm hopeful, having seen the proper attention paid to the electronics and a decent amount of capacitors put in the ESC and on the VTX, that I'm hopeful that we won't be dealing with the video noise issues that we had on the Tyro 99, which was one of its big fortunate letdowns. I mean, it was distracting enough to the point where it bothered me, but I think I'm more fussy than most when it comes to electronics doing their job properly. It bothers me more than it will. Some people I've seen with horrific video noise and they don't even. It's like I've pointed out something that they can't see. They're like, "What? What's wrong with that?" It's like, and I'm sitting there thinking, "How do you fly with this much noise on the screen?" I like my picture to be absolutely perfect. I don't want any noise in there. Screw. It's not a frame screw. I want the picture to just be nice and clean. Sick Crow says I only use XM Plus. I've seen too many fail safes at races with Crossfire. That's not an environment I've ever really been in. For me, I can't speak for what goes on with Crossfire in terms of being in close proximity with other people on Crossfire. But me and two or three of the people that I fly with, there's always at least two of us on Crossfire, and I've never ever had a failsafe. I've never had a failsafe. My Crossfire's always been absolutely brilliant. Anytime I've ever just sort of had anything weird, has always been where I've been messing with beta firmware. I can't help it. Always have to have the latest firmware. Living on the bleeding edge, sometimes you get cut. Where else am I missing screws? Got another long one to put in at the back. It's nice to see, same as the last kit. The last Tyro, they always gave you way more screws than you needed, so that's a cool thing. I always worry with some of these screws because, especially the aluminium ones, they're like cheese. You've got to be very careful you don't over torque and strip them. But there's less danger of that if you've got lots of extras in the kit, which this does. A couple more frame screws to put in there. But yeah, this feels like a really solid frame. Nicely braced. Oh yeah, side screw in the camera. It's pretty nice, eh? It's actually built up really. That's a really easy build. I said F4 32K gyro. We don't need to run it at 8K anyway. Proper soft mounting. Look at that. Nice amount of movement there on rubber standoffs. It's a little tidy little 3-inch quad. It's gonna go nicely. And it was nice to see this stack came with a lot of came with a separate capacitor and capacitors on the ESC. So yeah, we just need to chuck a XM Plus in that, and we're good to go. So we've ended up, yeah, there's a whole bunch of spares here. So we got extra body and motor screws. We got a bunch of extra nuts. We've got an extra camera screw. That's always good. We got an extra body screw because those are steel, and I think these ones are aluminium. Yeah, that's pretty good. So minus an XM Plus. Should we have a look at the weight? Get an idea what that... Okay, anyone want to make guesses? Just to make a guess. Bearing in mind, let's get another 3-inch out here. I mean, this is a high power 3. That's my monster 3-inch. I mean, look at this Cobra motors on this guy. Yeah, see, there's quite a difference. Both flight running 3-inch. So I imagine this is definitely heavier. It's beastly motors, but let's see. Let's have a look what we got. I'll spin this round for you. These extras out the way. So what do we got? 200 grams, 172 grams. Okay. I think 200 grams is going to be way too high. Let's see. I think it's going to be much lighter than that. Let's see. What if I put it in? Fluid ounces. Anyone want a measurement in fluid ounces? Right, here we go. 0 grams. Let me just reset that one more time. Okay, here we go. 144. What do we get? What do we get? Oh, you're all quite a bit higher. You are quite a bit higher there. So yeah, that's pretty damn good for a 3-inch. Let's have a look at my GEP RC. So this has obviously got a lot more hardware. Got the Caddx Turtles, so the extra board of that. This does have the XM Plus in, the beastly Cobra motors, the GPS. So this is definitely going to be heavier. 167. So yeah, not massively so. That's pretty good actually. 167 for the beast, and then this little Tyro 145. Yeah, that isn't going to weigh a lot, is it? Have I got a 4S battery kicking around? A 3 or a 4S? Let me see. I've got a couple that I would consider using. Okay, bear with me 2 secs. Okay, so we've got here's a 553S. My favourite batteries in the world from my wonderful battery sponsor Ready Eddy. Always gives me great performance. Love these things. All my main quad batteries are Ready Eddies. So this is a 550 milliamp 55C 3S. I use that on a lot of my micros. That would work great on that. So put those together. That takes us to 202. So once we've put our props on there and an XM Plus, I'd say we're on 3S. We're going to be under that 250 quite easily. I have got a 650 AC, sorry, it's pronounced, I think, 75C 4S. So this is a much beefier. But that's still zeroed. Build it. $229. So I think we're going to get, even on a 4S 650, we're getting away with that. We're actually going to get a sub 250 4S 3-inch quadcopter there. That's going to rip. That's going to be pretty good. I'll tell you what, do you want to see how you ruin the look of a beautiful quad like that? You put those on it. They're so ugly. Ugly, terrible performing. They're just going in the bin. Okay, so that's my only bit I hate about that package, really. We're not going to be able to. I'll save the video for when we do it rather than the live stream, when I do the actual review video, but just looking to see, I know I have more of these 3-inch props kicking around. I've got a whole bunch of different ones. I've got some, see, those would be more efficient and give you the thrust. So those are the HQ prop. Those would definitely, if you wanted to go for power, that would work. I have got somewhere here. Oh, here we go. 3x3x3. That could work. Sure, I've got another set of these dowels here. Has everyone else got just a massive box full of? Here we go. Massive box full of propellers. Right, let's have a look. That's what I think I will be using. Another set of these. So these are my favourite 3-inch T3056C. Good electricity. Good electricity. Why did I say that? Good. Props don't give you electricity. Good efficiency, the word I was looking for in my head, but said something completely different. Good performance, good power, will scream, will make you smile. Let's put these on. Now these immediately are going to look so much meaner on this. No. Even screwing these on just hurts my brain backwards. It's just wrong. It's counter-threaded stuff. So much better. Where my prop tool is. That's hiding somewhere. Nope. Okay. So yeah, 152 4S battery. I'm getting really good at obscuring that view, aren't I? Yeah, 235. We've then got a few grams for the XM Plus and a battery strap. So we've got the headroom there for. We've definitely got the headroom to keep that under 250 grams. So that's really good. That's a nice looking little build. That. So hopefully the things I'm crossing my fingers for are, compared to the old one, is less noise in the video, and looking at the components, that looks like that's going to be the case, which is great. An improved camera, and hopefully that's got to be a fairly new. It's not old stock. That's a fairly new design. So I think that's good. I haven't seen that camera around. I'm also hopeful for better bearings than the last one, because the bearings in the motors weren't terribly good. It was fine, but they wore out too quickly for my liking. So let's hope the bearings are a little bit better. This is obviously comparing to its bigger brother, the 99. But for 79 bucks plus a receiver and a proper nice set of propellers, you've got a pretty decent little 3-inch there. I think that looks great. So the full review video of that I should have out later tonight, and you will be able to have a slightly better look closely at this guy. And then, yeah, maybe tomorrow I'll actually get out and do some flying with it. But yeah, I think that's pretty cute. So that should rip at that weight, I reckon. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave you all in peace. I'm going to go and get some food and start seeing what the weather's going to be like tomorrow. Maybe I'll better get out and give this guy a fly. But thanks again for hanging out. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me. It's great to see you guys in the chat, and it certainly makes building a little less tedious when I'm sat here on my own. So I'm quite happy to do this a little more often. If you've enjoyed it and you would like to hang out with me more and chat, then please let me know, because yeah, I think we can do some more of that in the future. And it's always good to chat to you guys, because you can tell me other things that you want to see on the channel and give me ideas for stuff. So it's all good. But great to see you all. Take care. Enjoy your weekend if I don't speak before, and I will see you soon. Cheers.